I have a confession to make. I am a successful student. And you're probably thinking, wow, this kid is cocky. Who does he think he is? Or if you know me, you'll probably think I'm lying. To you, a successful student is one of the following: a person who gets a really high GPA, does every single season of sports, is super popular and outgoing, and something I realized recently, gets really good sleep. But when I started high school, I was none of that. I was an idiot because I still thought that high school was just as easy as middle school. Because in middle school, grades did not matter. There was no difference between an A or a B or a C, as long as you passed. But in high school, colleges, your parents, even your friends would start caring about your grades. In my freshman year, I also read an article titled "How These Students Got into Every Ivy League School." And although I didn't know much about universities, I still understood the prestige of the Ivy League. The best of the best. And for every child raised in an Asian household, Harvard was probably one of the first words we've ever learned. The article mentioned what these students did in order to get into those schools, and the first thing I saw was the number 4, followed by the letters G, P, and A. I thought that if I had a 4.0 GPA, Ivy League was basically guaranteed. And so this became my definition of a successful student, one who got a 4.0 GPA. And that year, I did everything in my power to try to get it. No longer could I sleep at 8 p.m. like I did in middle school. Instead, I was trying to stay up every night, trying to cram every piece of information I could into my head for all my subjects. I even cut back on everything else except academics. A social life? See you later, friends. Sleep? I'll sleep when I'm dead. Community service? I'll help out when I'm older. I kept this up for almost a year, and I was burned out. But this was all justified as long as I got that 4.0. And I'm sure you've heard this before, right? The story of a student who works their A off, gets all the good grades, goes to an Ivy League school, and becomes a millionaire. Well, that year, I didn't even get a 3.5. And I was devastated because I had worked so hard, yet all my effort went to nothing. I started questioning everything about myself. Was it my intelligence? It couldn't be. My parents are too smart. Or maybe it was my teachers. Maybe they didn't teach me correctly. But they were too nice. They wouldn't do that. Maybe the classes were just too hard and I bit off more than I could chew. But I love my classes. So for a while, I was hopeless. Sad, because I thought that my mess up in freshman year would ruin my entire life. But after coming to terms with my failure, I needed to learn a lesson. I realized that instead of trying to find balance in my life, I directed my attention to just one thing: grades. Because my whole life, I was told that I could do whatever in high school, but at the end of the day, grades. The one thing that separated you was the one thing that separated you from going to a good school or a bad school. And that grades was the one thing that separated you from having a good future or a bad future. Eventually, I came to hate this stupid idea of GPA and how it has caused so many students from all over the world, even my friends, to suffer from all-nighters and constantly feel pressured about having a high GPA. But the most important thing I realized was that the idea of a successful student having a 4.0 GPA was impossible. Not because it couldn't be done, but because if all you care about is your grades, what does that say about you as a person? I used to compare my success as a student with those who graduated with a perfect cumulative GPA, was president of 2 service clubs, and became their class valedictorian. These high achievers were the metric that I compared my success with. But remember how I told you that I am a successful student? It's not because I have a 4.0. It's because I stopped defining my success with grades. Because I started defining my success with things that I personally valued. Nowadays, I spend a lot of time studying, yes, but I also spend a lot of my time pursuing my own personal passions. If there's one thing for you to get from this TED Talk, it's that if your GPA isn't a 4.0, or you don't do every single season of sports, or that you're not super popular and outgoing, that is okay. I'm not telling you you shouldn't strive for these things, but we are all individual people. We all have our own talents and skills, things we understand in an instant, and things that take a few hours to really comprehend. Every one of you here have had bad days and good days. Days you couldn't imagine ending, and days you couldn't imagine surviving. And that's what makes you, you. You have a million different intricacies, and you are more complicated than what your GPA attempts to show you as. So after my failure of a freshman year, I entered 10th grade with a new definition for success. I promised myself that I would try to be happier, and that I wanted to do other things too, like doing sports for the first time, or participate in community service. But most of all, I wanted to be more outgoing. That year, I participated in sports for the first time, and I loved it. And the feeling I got from actually making a meaningful impact in someone's life through community service is a feeling I regret missing up on in my freshman year. And whether it was through clubs or sports or classes, or just being brave enough to say hi in the hallway, I met a lot of amazing people. Some I know are going to be here for me on my worst days. And whenever I failed a test, I didn't ask myself, how well did others do, or would this affect my GPA? Instead, I asked myself, how could I learn from this mistake? And all this would have never happened if I didn't change what a successful student meant to me. Success starts when you stop thinking of yourself as a failure. People think success is something you find, like a treasure, that one day you'll wake up and you'll realize what success means to you, or that it's an epiphany you get during the day. But I think success is something you create for yourself. It is something that is built on over time. As you live life, you absorb more values, more knowledge, more wisdom, more experience. You realize things that you previously didn't understand, and you learn new values that change your whole worldview. And by doing so, your values grow, and you grow as a person too. When I was a kid, I didn't have a definition for success. But as I grew older, in elementary, I thought a successful student was one who had fun every day and had a lot of friends. And when I entered middle school, I thought that it was a person who had really good grades. But now, after 9th grade, I realized that success is a student who pursues their own passions. So you're probably tired of me saying the word success, so I'll say it one more time. What is success to you?